never seen anything. I've never seen anything so consistent. It's always 2.6 kilohertz, day,
Weird.
night, whatever.
Wow. I mean, I know from latching on to buildings and connecting to buildings, I mean, there's always a tremendous amount of noise that you just can't get rid of that first couple of kilohertz on your scope reading. You know, it's always excessive. Bill and I talked about it many times. He says, don't even try to get rid of it. It's just a fact of life. It's coming in off the grid. But, you know, that's so unique. If that's what I'm seeing behind you, that's pretty unique. I'd love
well,
to see.
it's a high volume on the Stetzer meter, but if you look at the spectrum view above, there's really nothing out there. You know, it's clean all the way across until we turned on some dirty LED bulbs.
Yeah, I don't do much testing anymore, but whenever I do, it's all strictly with a spectrum analyzer. I just find it so simple, you know.
Okay, now notice also the way it's causing a stair-step sawtooth shape on the 60 cycle sine wave.
Yeah.
And so it's
that
not
I can help. That I can help.
So Eric and Terry, looking at the diagram behind Eric, which is great. How high of a spike do you need to see to start getting concerned about it? I'm looking for ways to quantify some of these dirty electricity sources. So Eric's got a shot that shows what the frequency is of that source. How high would that spike need to be before you say, gee, we should try and take some action on that one? Because there are other spikes along that. There's one like up at 37 kilohertz.
Yep. Yep. And well, looking at the bottom, I can't see. Looking at his bottom picture, he's got some significant activity there. And you know, when I go into do tests in international airports and their sensitive systems, and you know, when I show the engineers my results, they want them all gone. Because any kind of transient activity, just because it happens to, if you take a by the second shot or a millisecond and it happens in one particular spot on your sine wave, it doesn't mean it's going to happen in exactly the same place next time. Right. So, you know, most people, the engineers and the electrical people that I deal with, they just understand that it's causing them havoc everywhere and they want them gone. And that's so, you know, we usually do tests pre and post. I did a very unique test in just before COVID hit. Bill was with me down in Vegas, and it was just prior to that. I think he wanted me to talk to you about that, but it was I'll be quick. We were called in to do a test on the power systems that they had in this one particular casino. And it was more to do with their arena facility where they would throw big acts on, and forever their soundboards and system would go down for every time. So we got called in and we ended up doing I gave a presentation and we ended up doing some testing. And I started there, but they were running a cheerleading competition, so they didn't have a heavy load on it. So I said, okay, I want to go in the casino. And they said, okay, we want you to do some slot machines. So I started rubbing my hands and I'm going, all right, I've been wanting to do that for years. And so I hooked my stuff up. I said, I don't want any panel. And they had 70 panels with slot machines, and each panel did 125 machines. So that's how many machines they had. And I said, I don't want the minuscule one. I want the worst. I want the one that you've got maintenance guys going out on the floor and pulling machines off every day and repair. And I said, I want the worst panel. So they came up with this one panel. I went in and I hooked on and I monitored for about 20 minutes. And I said, I started taking my stuff apart, and they said, well, you know, what did you get? And I showed them the pictures and they were just like in awe. So about 3 weeks later, I returned and we installed 2 units, one on that panel and then one on their arena panel. And honestly, just before COVID, I haven't talked to them since, but just before COVID, they had gone, at that time, it was 16 months with not one single call off of that panel for any slot machine. And they were doing an average of 5 to 6 a day. So they were going, well, yeah, we're going to implement, we got to go. And then COVID hit. So, you know, we've been dealing with lots of them there, but that's what happens. And by the looks of that picture on the sine wave behind Eric, that there's some significant activity there, and who knows where it's coming from or what, but I have a hunch that we can help you there.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate your analysis of this.
No, not a problem.
Hey, Terry Annette here. I have a question.
Hi.
You say the Sine Tamer so then absorbs the energy and pushes it to the ground. How does that affect somebody who, say, has a sleep switch installed and this energy is going then onto the ground? This is still being filtered through the Sine Tamer?
Okay, well, start with a sleep switch as long as it switches the neutral,
Right.
you know. But getting back to, we don't just push the energy onto the ground. We absorb it through the different modes first. There is very little that goes back onto the ground. It's a very minute amount, and it's in the form of heat. So
Okay.
you don't know where it's going. It doesn't go back onto any power.
So neutral, line to line, line to neutral, line to ground, and neutral to
And
ground.
neutral to
So
ground.
it's spread out
Yeah.
over all those.
Yeah,
paths.
all modes. And in a single phase mode, it's 6 mode. It's virtually 6 modes, and in a 3-phase, it's 10.
Okay, so the super sensitive person isn't going to notice this.
No, not at all. It adds nothing back onto the power.
They feel better.
Yes.
Okay. And
Instantly.
then as far as voltage drops in a home, like say, I know it obviously can't do anything if it's to do with a conductor size, you know, needing to beef up your conductor, but if it's coming from an external, like say you're getting 10, 13% voltage drops in areas of a home, is this going to smooth out or?
No, when you get sags and swells and you know, longer duration of 2-3 seconds or whatever, that's not what the Sine Tamer is designed for. That's more of a capacitive device, you know. And the Sine Tamer is meant for all the things that you don't see that happen very quickly, the transients.
Okay.
Yeah, and the lightning.
Annette, do you have lights getting brighter at the same time there's a sag?
No, not in all cases. Some, like one, I know a home that, yeah, the lights are going up and down, but it's in a close proximity to a racetrack. And so I could see a Sine Tamer being pretty useful in that house now, but no other occasions. No, there's no sags or, you know.
There's motor starts that'll pull a sag, but
Yeah.
I'm mostly cautious about your open neutral situation, because one thing will get brighter while another one gets less when you have an open neutral situation. So be very careful with that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But in just, you know, a lot of homes having these voltage drops in, say, different areas of the house. And if it's, I know it could be attributed to just to how far away they are from the can on the pole. So if it's not like directly feeding their house, it's down, you know, a few homes. This is what the electrical inspector attributes a lot of it to.
I don't know about that. I would be asking some questions and doing some testing, because that's not, you know, if they're that far from the pole and that's an issue, then they should be having low voltage issues, you know, which they should see. You know, a lot of these we put too much credence in these electrical inspectors and the power providers. You know, these guys, they're not interested in things that you guys are testing for. As a matter of fact, I know what they're going to do. They're going to walk away and say, these guys are nuts. We don't care. Their job is to supply power to the door, and that's it.
We hear it every day.
Yeah, every day. I dealt with it so many times, it's ridiculous.
Terry, can I ask a question?
Sure.
This is Ken.
Yeah.
This is Ken from Massachusetts. My
Okay.
primary question is that the 2020 NEC now has a surge suppressor device requirement. My local jurisdiction is now requiring that, and I've talked to a neighbor. They were required to have a surge suppressor where the LED operative light was visible at all times, not behind any cover, but that involved a weatherproof installation of a surge suppressor, and more than 6 to 8 inches probably, or a clear screen on a door. Do you know anything about the Sine Tamer specifically being used to address and meet that NEC 2020 requirement?
Not a problem. We're weather tight. We give you weather tight fittings with it. We're mounted in an awful lot of airports and segways outside on their panels.
Lovely.
And we have visible lights on the very front of it, LED lights that are shining as long as the power is on and it's hooked up, they're on. And as far as water and whatever, yeah, we can meet any requirement.
Lovely. All right. So the 6 to 8 inches, as long as it can be outside and 6 to 8 inches.
Yeah.
It sounds like a bit of a challenge, but
Well,
yeah.
if it isn't, then you twist your lines, like I said, and I would tell you that at the time.
okay.
Right.
Just one of the things we're concerned about, and to get this, I'm trying to take the smart meter off the house using Andrew's guidelines. But it isn't on the list of things that you had listed, but I'm concerned about solar flares and other solar events energizing large segments of the transmission lines, and those bursts coming into the house and causing a fire. You know, we're in a big sunspot cycle for the next 10 years. I do my long-term planning. Is this going to help? Is that considered a transient, or is that too slow moving?
I don't know. I think that's pretty quick. I've run into this more and more lately, people talking about it. But if it comes in as a burst of energy, and if it's that sudden, and then it's transient, basically I would classify it as transient. Is it energy or is it heat and everything included?
I don't think it's heat. I think it's just impressed on the transmission lines. It's solar wind. I mean, it's just, it gets through the atmosphere, and the Van Allen the belts don't block it, and it comes straight through. You know, it's the thing that blows out. They blew out in Canada 20 years ago, you know.
Right.
So
And
that,
1860s.
I don't want my house exploding is what I don't trust the smart meters to protect me any way, shape, or form.
No, well, we're due for another blowout here in Canada.
Exactly.
It's got to do with our prime minister in Ottawa, but that's
well, you'll have,
but you know, I don't know for sure, but I would say if it's an energy burst like that that's coming through on the power, I would think that it would be almost classified as a gigantic lightning strike. It sounds like the same kind of energy burst.
Yeah, in lieu of anything else, it's just a different form.
Yeah.
And who knows, it could be a sales driver for you if you do some research into it, because people are going to continue talking about it for the next 5 or 10 years.
I knew about the new lightning regulations, and I knew about, and you know, I've said to many people over the last year, you're crazy if if you're going to install a suppression unit, you might as well install something that's capable of protecting all your electronics and everything too, right? Because value dollar wise, the Sine Tamer is, middle of the road in the pack, if not the lower side of the middle of the road. So you're getting unbelievable quality. That's because we're worldwide. You know, we don't have a segregated industry. So
one thing to be very careful of is go to Home Depot and get their $50 surge suppressor.
Yeah.
Do not do that.
Yeah, I've run into that all the time. And they're just a lightning protector, but they're not great. You know, they probably don't even cover all modes. So that's one thing, you know, when, and you know, I've told you about the Sine Tamer and everything, and it's more important to me, rather than making a sale, to give you the knowledge to be able to look into things properly, to know what you're getting for your dollar and for your protection levels. And, you know, we're not shy on any spec sheet that I give you for any unit. I will give you the testing specs for it and let through voltage, and nobody else does that. So you can see actively, and that's my intention, is to give you the knowledge that it takes. You know, you buy a unit, great. That's not my intent here or my push. My push is to give you the knowledge and to let you understand what it's all about.
Jerry, I have a question. If the Sine Tamer is really good at an instantaneous or singular spike suppression, how come it only has 30 dB of suppression for something that's continuous, like dirty electricity from a solar system or a variable speed pump?
Well, traditionally, you know, and I'm going to say this with all honesty, we've protected an awful lot of solar systems and big systems. But, you know, until it was brought to me about about these issues 4 or 5 years ago, you know, a typical solar system could have between 5 and 7 sine tamers on it in various parts of their circuitry. So, you know, we were never concerned with that before. And the 30 decibel level that we have in our encasings for that gave us the ability in our circuitry to not to have to go to bigger enclosures. And I think that that really had all part of the design process years ago, that it was fine, because I mean, this is all new stuff. And that's why I congratulate and I admire all you people that are getting into it or have been doing it for a long time with your knowledge and teaching people about it, because, you know, there's so many people. I mean, I have a hard enough time finding an electrician that is even remotely knows about any of this stuff.
No, my question is, what could be done to the Sine Tamer to make it have a higher level of continuous
Decibel.
attenuation?
Right. And I'm working on that right now. I am working on that. And I'm not sure if it's going to be an add-on or it's going to be, I'm not sure yet. I don't really want to say. We are working on it to make it, give it a greater decibel rating on the protection.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Hey,
So
Terry,
Terry, have you installed a lot in recording studios?
We've got quite a few in recording studios. I've supplied a lot to electricians all over North America.
Okay.
There's, you know, this is the kind of a product that, like, you know, I'm always on the road. I'm locked in here in my house because of COVID and it's Canada. But the simple fact is that when things are moving, I'm always gone. I'm doing meetings with everybody. And there's really, because of the special, you know, but you got to understand that it's only been the last couple of years that this stuff has really come to the forefront for every industry. You know, we've gone so overboard now with our technology that it's only now that it's showing all the bad spots of what we haven't been doing, you know, the protecting modes. And so,
yeah,
I just installed a Sine Tamer in a recording studio in Nashville.
okay.
cool.
Yeah,
And is that the sole protection then?
that is the sole protection for the entire facility.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, but you
And
also
it's
have
a very well-known recording studio. I can't mention the name.
Yeah.
Let me
No,
just
this
say,
is
I
ideal with,
got a phone call 3 days later saying, "What'd you fix?" Because I don't see these problems anymore. They were mentioning the various problems they were having with recording quality and, you know,
Yeah.
skips and beats, and they couldn't
Right.
figure out because there was some power grid change, obviously, at the utility company that affected them, and they didn't know what.
okay,
it's
and
not
would this
only
be
dirty
one
electricity
unit?
that affects sound studios.
It was
Depends.
one
We
unit.
worked with two
Yeah.
just recently in Hollywood, and it was actually cellular radiation because they installed cell sites on
Yeah.
the opposite side of the building, and it was directed directly at the studio, and the microphones had noise at the background. So I don't think that at that point of time, that's the only cause, dirty electricity, but also wireless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have that going on in Vancouver right now. A studio is complaining about that too, and they're blaming it solely on the cell tower installed.
Here, this is what we did. We built a little box, a shielded box, all like a Faraday cage with a door, and then brought it to the studio, put the microphone inside, and then see if the noise disappeared. And it did. And that was a sign that when you put the shielding up there, technically it would eliminate the RF frequencies and they wouldn't have any interference anymore, because
Wow.
that's an expensive undertaking to
Sure.
do that in a sound
Yeah, it
studio.
is.
So you want to make sure that that really is the solution to it.
Yeah. And it just, you can get a hold of me on my email anytime. I'll help you out anytime.
Right.
You know, we can even have a meeting. I can give you some information, and you're local, you're out of Vancouver, are you not?
I'm on the island.
Oh, on the island? Oh, you poor thing.
I know. Oh, no.
Yeah,
Thanks.
anytime. You get a hold of me on my email, and I'm happy to answer anything you have, any of your needs.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, Terry?
Yeah.
Oh, you can hear me. This is John from Wisconsin.
Hi, John.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Hey, a question, maybe Bill, you can kind of chime in on this, but I live in a condo and there's a bank of smart meters there. And, you know, there's a disconnect on each smart meters. So, you know, on that bank. So, so my 200 amp panel that's in my condo is actually considered a sub panel. So you have from the meter panel to my panel in the house, I've got the, you know, the two legs hot, I got the neutral, and I got a ground. And the ground is, of course, a little aluminum stranded one that goes to the ground. So what I did was I put my Sine Tamer, I put that on it would be the sub panel is what I did. And I actually took the ground because, you know, you have the bus bar of the ground, it's on the other side. So I bonded it to the pan. So my question is that Bill talked earlier about the changing out that ground wire to the 1-aught wire if you needed to, the 1-aught stranded. So if that's the case, that would be changed out, of course, on that 200 amp sub panel, and that's where you would want the Sine Tamer because it would be cleaning that too, correct?
Right. You're in a condo or a townhouse?
Yeah, we're in it's actually a condo. It's a 4-unit condo.
Okay.
And so there's a meter bank with 4, you know.
It's awful. It's awful. And yeah, that's the best place for it because you've got common walls. So depending on how the walls are built, you know, are they stick, or they common to the neighbor next door, you're going to have all that garbage flowing around your your condo, and you're looking to protect that. I've seen, you know, here in Vancouver, and I'm sure it's like everywhere else, we see tons of complexes, especially older people, extended care, where there's like 50 condos or 100 condos in 5 floors, and each floor has a room that's got, you know, 30 or 40 smart meters in it. I can't imagine. I'm yet to see, when I walk in those places, anybody not walking around on a cane and ready to die. You know, the emissions are just absolutely nuts, and they're getting away with this, you know. So as far as you and your condo, yeah, you know, it's always a little testy when you've got condos or townhomes that are joined, but you got to do your part. I'm not sure how tough it's going to be for you to change your ground wire. You know, that could be a bit of an issue for you.
You might not be able to change it.
Yeah, you may not be able to.
Just deal with it.
Yeah.
So you'd have to deal with it. So you wouldn't want to because the neutral on my panel going back, the neutral on my sub panel that's going back to the meter panel, I'm sure that is actually connected to the ground rod, correct?
It should be.
Should be.
Probably, yeah, more than likely. Yeah.
So if I have a ground problem in my sub panel, I can actually just pull that neutral, or not the neutral, the ground, and actually then run, if I can run a stranded 1-aught, out to an area where there is, you know, I got under 5 ohms of impedance, and there's no ground current or little ground current.
Yeah, if you're able to do your testing and you can do it. Yeah, I'd be curious of what your readings are right now. You know, see what they are. But
Yeah.
if you can do it, yeah, I don't know if you've got access. You must have access to outside, like you got your own little yard or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, good luck. They're always tough, condos and apartments.
Hey, Terry, this is Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi. I just want to say fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
I really like the analogy that the Sine Tamer acts as a pressure release valve. I really think that gives you a visual, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But my question is, we're talking about smart meters in the Bay Area. Our meters are labeled as such, smart meters. When I'm in Tahoe, I look at these meters, it doesn't say smart meter, and I thought, oh, it's all good. Well, subsequently, I have recently found out they use what's called an AMI meter. I wonder if you could talk about the differences, and I'm assuming the Sine Tamer would work in the same way. I just don't know the difference in those two meters.
Well, you know, the common thing with power companies is that they'll say, well, you know, we can always give you a meter that doesn't, you know, push anything out. You know, we just have to send a meter reader in every month. You pay for it. It's an opt-out meter, you know, but it's still a digital meter. The only time you're going to get reprieve from anything, as long as if you've got a digital meter, and whether it's a smart meter or a digital meter or whatever have you, if it's got a switch mode power supply, you're getting the stuff. You're getting the garbage. The analogs are the only ones that don't push it. And even if I get this a lot of times, people say, well, geez, you know, I'm going to convince the power company to put an analog meter back on my house. I say, well, okay, do you live in a suburb, you know, where you got lots of neighbors around this? Yep, absolutely. And I said, well, have they got smart meters? They said, yep. So, well, it doesn't matter. It's going to come in right off through your analog meter too.
Hey, Terry, detailed question on that. Do you happen to know the frequency of the switch mode power supply on the smart meters so we could see those on the picoscope?
They vary to brand, don't they, Bill?
Yeah, so you're going to see anywhere from 12 kilohertz up to 300 or 450 kilohertz.
Yeah.
Wow.
They all vary by the name.
Yeah, so most of the opt-out meters like the census meter and the Itron C1S meter, I think the census meter oscillates at 300 kilohertz, and the Itron C1S meter, which is an opt-out meter, is I think oscillating at 450 kilohertz.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, that's great information. Is there any way that we could connect the dot and by going out and looking at the manufacturer of our meter and looking up somewhere what?
Well, I think part of later on, I'm going to demonstrate different. I have a test rig for smart meters, and I've got one of everything. And we'll plug them in and see what we find.
That'll be
He's
awesome.
the man.
I haven't done this for a while, but it'll be interesting to watch.
It will be.
And I have turned off all the filtering in my house for this demo. So I'm getting all the crap coming in from the utility and my neighbors and everything else. So please bear with us. Basically, it's going to be a lot dirtier than you saw the other day.
So Cheryl, just so you understand, all smart meters are digital to begin with. But what Terry's talking about when he talks about pushing things out, he means having a communication module that sends out a radio signal.
Yes.
And usually the neighborhood area network broadcasts in for most of these companies at 900 megahertz, sometimes at 2.4 gigahertz. The home area network is usually the Zigbee 2.4 gigahertz signal, and that's not turned on all of these models. But most smart meter neighborhood area networks are about 900 megahertz. And so that's the RF. Now that's one way of communicating. Another way of communicating from electric meters to the home office, utility office, is through power line PLC, power line carrier. And that's dirty electricity injecting right onto the
That's right.
sine wave.
And we actually clean that.
We have a demo of that here today.
Yeah, we clean that both ways, whatever's coming in or going out.
Well, I think what's interesting is that they think because it's not a true smart meter, it's, oh, we have an AMI meter,
Yeah.
it's not bad.
Yeah.
And so-
AMI meters transmit too. I mean, you know.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying that's what.
Yeah.
the
Anytime you
impression-
talk to utility company personnel, I don't care whether it's the clerk opening the door or the bookkeeper or the president of the company, take a lie detector machine with you.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're talking about. The rep that you
That's
call
true.
up, customer
Bill,
rep,
what
they
did
have
you
no
say?
idea. And the guy who puts it on, he has no idea.
All right, I think Doug Grimes wants to make a comment. I think you put your hand up, Doug.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify what you
Okay.
do in a multi-unit building, a condo or a metered apartment building, where you have one bank of meters that, you know, at the end of the building, and 50 or 100 feet away, you may have your own individual sub-panel. Is it possible to, you know, if the community association or the apartment owner allows you to install a Sine Tamer at the meter bank, is it possible to do it there? Or can you also do it in the individual unit? Because it'd be a lot easier if you
Yeah.
condo or apartment.
Yeah, you definitely want to do it at the unit because like I said, I get back to, you know, why would you spend that much money? I mean, your health is worth it, you know, to get rid of the frequencies coming in from the smart meter, but you want to protect all your sensitive electronics and everything else as well. So it's rare that you find people progressive enough to say, oh yeah, hey, let's protect everything, you know, because it's not that it can't be done. We can do it, but you know, it's if you're looking at that kind of a thing, then the only thing I need is your voltage, your phase configuration, and your total amperage, and of what that wiring panel is, because we do it all. We go right up to 600 volts and beyond, but so that's what we need if you're looking to do something like that. But it's rare, you know, people willing to do that. Most of the time they just opt after they talk to me to protect their apartment.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Hey, Terry, I have this is Elizabeth, and
Sure.
in our area, most of the houses don't have, a disconnect. The panels, the neutrals and the grounds are together. And so is it necessary to, do the disconnect and have the grounds and the neutrals isolated on their own bus bars to put this in? Or is it okay to put it in if we correct all the wiring errors? I know you need to clean up but are we going to need to, put a disconnect?
Well, I think that you should, if you got a single phase system and you don't have a ground and a neutral dedicated, I think you got to look at doing that, because if you're dealing with EMF issues, you know, you got to fix that problem. I mean, you know, I run into that a lot. I've seen that many times where the ground and the neutral are just marretted together and they carry on, you know. That's not conducive to our health. And, you know, it's one thing to protect the power, but it's another thing to make it right.
I have one more question too. And does
Sure.
the Sine Tamer put any other frequencies back on the lines, or is
No.
it?
No.
great.
No, we don't discharge anything.
I have one, and I have to say that I am very, very impressed because my body is almost a meter.
Thank you.
It's on a power line communication, and it is amazing when I turn that off and turn it back on. I can literally feel the spikes and the transients and how well I have solar around. I don't have the DNA 3s and that other system, but it is, I'm quite impressed with how it works, and I'm very thankful that you
Good.
created it, because I think it is something that can really help people.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for helping and doing what you do.
That's
Can I ask
important.
a question? Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, this is for Bill and Terry. So my understanding, what you're saying is that the smart meter issue is a switching power supply issue, besides from the RF radiation. But we're talking about the dirty electricity. Can we put that a little bit in perspective?
Sure, let me help.
Because we have, you know, plugs, power cords for laptop computers where we have switching power supplies inside our homes. So how does that relate? How much does my plug-in power supply from my computer create, and how much does the smart meter?
All right, so let me explain what's going on here. And this is
Good,
the
thank
sin
you.
of the smart meter, okay? So the smart meter switch mode power supply circuitry does not have what you have in your laptop power supply, your PC power supply, your TV power supply, your washing machine, whatever electronic device you got, okay? Inside those devices, there is a circuit that allows mitigation of what's called common mode current and differential mode current from backfeeding onto the power line that feeds the switch mode power supply. Okay, so there's a pair of coils. Differential mode is a pair of coils, and common mode is one coil. So there's wires wrapped around that come in from the power line or from the switch mode power. It depends on whether it's the AC side or DC side. They have different designs for each one. Yeah. Okay, but basically what it's going to do is those what they call they're kind of an inductor, but they're a choke coil, basically is what they're called officially. And so it's a spiral wrap. I have a presentation on my website about this whole thing, about the circuit design that could have been put in place that would have saved everybody all this nightmare. Okay. And I'm not kidding you. It's a cost of about $2 per meter to fix this. They will never fix it because they want to spend $2. So the reason that everybody put a smart meter on, suddenly you're sick, right? That's how reaction I get from people. Put the smart meter on or the opt-out meter on, and I'm suddenly sick. What's going on? So I did some research on this and looked at the design. I've ripped apart every smart meter I get my hands on and look at the circuit board design and stuff like that. And that is the one missing thing. They do not have a choke coil that prevents common mode current and differential mode current from backfeeding onto the power that's feeding the circuit. So now this common mode current and differential mode current, even though it's very small, let me explain that. It's not amps, okay? It's in milliamps, okay? And it's backfeeding on all the power lines in the house. So the house becomes this huge, conductive characteristic. And that is what I have found to be the fundamental reason why smart meters are causing people to be sick. The switching mode power supply has transient voltages also. So it's a combination of both. But in my estimation, common mode current and differential mode current in all my other experiments in life before I got into this business, okay, is something to be avoided at all costs. Okay. When I worked at Emerson, we would do a significant amount of effort to avoid common mode current and differential mode current backfeeding onto the power line that's feeding the circuit. I mean, we spent millions of dollars to prevent this. Okay. And we were successful. And so when customers bought our products at Emerson, they had to go through a lot of scrutiny, had to be at least 50% better than the specification required. And this is one of the characteristics we did in order to achieve that objective. And so that is not well known, okay? And once I get my lab up and running, I'm gonna really do a full-fledged demo of this whole scenario and how to fix it. But that is the key characteristic here.
When the smart meter is magnitudes worse than my power supply for my laptop.
The power supply for your laptop will show you more transients, possibly voltages, but I guarantee you the common mode and differential mode currents are removed because I worked for Hewlett Packard and I worked on power supplies for laptops and for tower PCs. And this is one of the things we did to avoid that problem. If you rip apart your switch mode power supply for your laptop, and I have one here somewhere, I don't know where, but you'll see these coils in there. They're physically present.
Mm.
Okay. Now, will it have possibly some transient voltages? Yes, it's possible it will. Okay. Not all of them do, but many do. And so we're all focusing on, you know, plugging in the Stetzer meter and the green wave meter and measuring millivolts or measuring GS units and all this kind of stuff. We see a big number or a larger number, which can be mitigated. But the common mode current, if you don't catch it at the circuit, you'll never be able to mitigate it.
Yeah, it's true. Plus the fact is they're never going to change anything because they're making money off it with increased bills. So it's all money driven as well.
If I could come up with a solution for this, listen, I'll be a multimillionaire.
Hey, Bill.
Well, you already were.
Well, let's not go there.
Bill, could you take another swipe at just defining? So we have current backing up. You're saying,
yeah.
So I'm having that's in a 60 hertz, so it's not high frequency. It's backing up, and I'm having a little trouble seeing what the problem with that is.
All right, let me see if I can bring up what I'm talking about here. Hold on a minute. Hold on. Well, go ahead. Somebody else has a question, and I'm going to get this, and I'll present it in a minute.
This is just a general question for everyone. I mean, I know, say you move a lot, and then obviously there's already a meter on there, and they're not going to put the analog back. And I see in the internet people are selling analog meters. Does the utility company ever allow you to bring your own analog meter if you're in a state where they do still let people have their own analog meter? I mean, I don't want to buy one and have it be told, no, you can't use that.
Not easily.
Yeah, I'd be really surprised to see them put an analog meter.
But they're just, whoever's selling those is just making a lot of money. They
would rather murder their own children than give you an analog meter.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right.
Oh, no, I know. I was just curious if it was worth doing that. Okay.
So I found what I'm looking for. I'm going to present it. Give me a second.
Hey, Bill, so is it under the education tab on your website?
No, I'll send the link to everybody. Can you
I just
see
want
that?
to say real quick, sorry, Bill, about what Mika said. A person in Kansas, they put an analog meter in Westar Evergy, and they were not allowed to buy power for the rest of their lives.
Really?
He had 3 kids. So
Really?
they don't like that.
Kidding me? They penalized them that much, eh?
Yeah, well, he was getting power from his neighbor's house because they shut him off for it, and then they found that out, and they banned him from buying power in the whole state, pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kansas is not an opt-out state. Missouri is.
Really?
All right. So I've got what I wanted to find. This is on my website. I'll send a link to everybody. Okay. So you can see here this circuit diagram in white. See that?
Yep.
Sure.
So line 1 and line 2 is the incoming power. Okay.
At 240 volt.
So what's that?
It says a panel mount.
This particular example is 120 volts, but because they only hook up to one side of the power line coming into the meter. So
Okay.
but this is not the meter design. Okay, this is a properly designed switching mode power supply filtering circuit. Okay. Right. So this circle here, you see the line inductor 1, L1. Okay, choke 1. There's a coil and another coil goes this way. So this recirculates things back and forth. You see this is 2-way. So this is a short resistor just to kind of keep, if there's a short circuit, this will cause this to fail. This is what they call the X capacitor. So Stetzer filter rather, is basically this. It's an X capacitor, okay? So it's just line 1 to line 2, just as a shunt, okay? That's what a Stetzer or a green wave does, okay? See this one here that's got CY, C4, it's got a pair of capacitors and a link between them, okay? That's called a Y capacitor, okay? And then this other line inductor here basically is after that filter is in place, And then there's another CX3, which is another X capacitor here. And it goes off the load. You'll notice there's a ground path. Okay, see that? There is no ground path on a smart meter. So if you look at this picture, okay, this coil set is this thing right here in silver, in copper color. See that?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then this is the, I'm pretty sure it's the X capacitor or the Y capacitor. I picked that. This is the Y capacitor system. Okay, it comes in a module. Okay. And then there's some other capacitors here, which is the X capacitors. And there's this particular circuit board has a transformer on it, which then these are all what they call electrolytic capacitors, which smooth out the DC to the actual source point. This is the DC output right here. Okay. So this is the AC input on this side, DC output on that side. You can see all the circuitry you need to make this happen. Okay. None of this equipment on this board is inside a smart meter. None. Had they properly designed it, they could have done it several this way. This is just one representation. Okay, they could have done it with half, didn't need the transformer, etc. Okay, this is a switching circuit here. Okay, this little black thing. It's a transistor. And some of these other things are diodes and make it from AC to DC and all that kind of stuff. So, but this is the fundamental circuit that we're talking about that they left out of every smart meter. This, I guarantee you, there's a circuit like this in your PC power supply, on your TV power supply, on your digital electronics power supply. This circuit is almost essential in order to remove backfeeding of noise onto the power line and creating noise in the circuit itself. And audiophiles will recognize this circuit very easily. They look for that in every part of the product they buy, but that gives you an example, okay?
Which is why, Bill, I don't measure DE coming out of, laptops and electronic equipment like that. I do from dimmer switches, compact fluorescent lights, solar PV inverters, electrically commuted motors, et cetera, but not from electronics, and you just explain why.
No, you know what? I measure plenty of dirty electricity coming from my Microsoft Surface power supply.
Yeah.
So they're not all equal. Some are different.
Yeah, they're all different. So I'll send the link to this to everybody so they have a copy of it.
Yeah, Bill, that particular diagram is standard for all the filters I've seen for line power filters. And there are many, it's a big industry out there. A lot of them for industrial stuff, so you can get up to, kilovolts. And a lot of them for smaller, like individual circuits, 15, 20, 30 amps. But I'm just wondering, to take care of the smart meter, can you just slap a 100, 200 amp filter on your main, between the smart meter and your feed into the main panel?
Are you
smart
asking
meter
if you can do
is
it?
the feed into the panel. Everything goes right through it.
Well, the unit that we sell the most in North America and pretty much the world for this issue is the voltage in North America, of course, 120, 240 single phase, but it's good for up to 600 amps. So
yeah, so wherever you went through where you would put it. You talked about that with Andrew.
Yeah. And it's like, it's the most common unit and it's got big capabilities, but it's, it doesn't use it if it doesn't need it.
Yeah, okay, so that's for the Sine Tamer. But if you want more than 30 decibel filtering for the stuff above 1 kilohertz, then you need an additional meter. And so you'd put that right after the Sine Tamer before you go into the rest of the panel.
I would think it'd be mounted on the same panel, as
well, you want it in series before it feeds your panel breaker.
Yeah, but you're gonna have two connections to your power as well. There's gonna be one for each leg, right? So as far as the DNAs you're talking about?
No, I'm not talking DNA. I'm just talking a regular passive filter like the diagram Bill you showed.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, Bill will probably know more about that than me.
So specifically to your question is what?
Where do, would a passive filter like the one you just showed us, the diagram, would that take care of, you know, a whole house filter, a whole building filter? Can you put that right before your meter feeds into the panel?
Okay, so if you weren't aware of this, well, it's not necessarily they'll ever admit to it, but the DNA filter brand, the V2X filter, the V3LF filters that they sell, that circuit I showed you is inside their product.
I thought they were an active filter. But
no, they're a passive filter that clamps onto the and looks for this transient, and it will do something about the actual differential and common mode currents that it finds. Okay, and it will mitigate it to heat. And so
okay.
if you take a V2X filter apart, you're going to find two blue modules in there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they're much more significant than the picture I showed you. Okay. They're large. Okay. So all of that circuitry is within that module. And there's a pair of them. Okay. To help mitigate the DE as much as possible. And so that's the only filter I've ever seen have that technology. No Stetzer, no Greenwave, no static, no nothing has anything close to that.
So forget the stuff that's outside the DNA. Forget all the Stetzer, Greenwave, all those little capacitive filters. Think of the industrial filters or the other filters. You know, from the major filter manufacturers like Schaffner, Schurtner, Astrodyne, Radius Power became Astrodyne. All those are following the exact diagram you showed us.
Yes.
Are you saying the DNA has that exact diagram also?
Yes, it does.
Bigger, and so it's just bigger components?
It has that plus much more.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And I can't just divulge what that is.
Okay. Can you say whether that active digital circuitry with you know, for impedance balancing, because that can be a problem with the passive filters?
Yes. Yeah. And so the DNA filter, the V2X filter, is different, much different than like a Stetzer or a Greenwave. Completely different.
No, forget Stetzer, Greenwave, forget all the capacitive stuff. Think only of the stuff that address common mode and differential mode, because Stetzer and Greenwave don't do that.
They don't do it.
Yeah. So just the filters that have both common mode choke and differential. Now the filter you showed us, it looked like you have two common mode chokes. There's two, so you would have
that particular diagram I showed you.
Yeah,
I'm trying not to get into DNA's design. Okay, so
okay, but that's
they
fine.
They have multiple common mode chokes and multiple differential mode chokes and other circuitry inside their module. That
okay, and so what the passive filters are lacking in my mind is impedance matching.
Correct.
And so it's possible if you're not careful and you don't use additional filters like ferrites and stuff to deal with resonance effects that you can get if you have the wrong impedance matching, then does the DNA have circuitry that automatically matches impedance so that whatever kind of load, whatever inductive or capacitive reactance you have on your load, and however that changes with any washing machines and variable frequency drives, you're saying that the DNA filter will handle that?
Yes.
Fantastic.
In fact, I literally spent almost 7 months figuring out which filters worked, which ones didn't. And I put them through a battery of my test as best I could in my lab with the way it was laid out. And I said, holy smokes, this stuff, other stuff doesn't work.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Okay.
And I got the DNA. I traveled to Iowa to interview these people. Okay.
Yeah.
And I literally spent a week with them to understand their design and the results I got, and confirming with them, why do I have the results I have? Is this doing this? Is it doing that? And after that, I said, that's it. I am not selling a Stetzer and green wave meters under any circumstances. Same with static. I will not sell them.
You mean filters or meters?
The filters.
Well, DNA doesn't have a meter yet, but so Bill, your favorites are DNA and Terry's Sine Tamer.
So far.
Okay.
So far.
Hey, Bill.
Which one comes first when you install it? I mean, the Sine Tamer or the pair of DNA?
It depends on what I measure. Okay. So as we know, right, 30 decibels is not a tremendous amount of attenuation. Okay. But if it's, here's the problem. I got a customer calls me and says, I need a filter. And I said, what do you have? Solar? No, I don't have solar. And then they said, okay, fine. So they buy a Sine Tamer and they plug in a Stetzer meter. And I go, it's not below 50 right now. What's the problem?
It's not what?
Not below 50. What's the problem?
Oh, for God's sake.
And I'm not kidding you. That's how, and Terry can tell you about these conversations all the time.
You can't go by the 50. I mean,
I'm telling you, that's what happens. Okay.
That's a pipe dream.
And you tell them that meter isn't necessarily accurate. They go, well, I spent a good $100 on this meter. And this meter is a good $100, and I'm not going to deny that this meter is the right meter, and it's been told by me this is the right meter. And going, that whole discussion goes down the rat hole.
And it says on the back, it's got to be 25 to 50 units, or otherwise they go nuts.
It doesn't say anything about wire errors and all kinds of other monkey business going on. And customers got Alexas all over the house, and you name it, right? So, and Terry and I have been through these discussions with some customers.
Bill, my question was, you got them both. I mean, you have the DNA and the Sine. When you're installing them, what is the first? Sine before the DNA.
Based on those questions, are you on solar? Yes or no? If they say no, I said okay. So what have you checked with measurements? What are you seeing, right? And they'll say something like, well, I got 1900 GS units. And I go, you got some devices inside your home that are causing noise. You need to eliminate those, because if you think I'm going to put a Sine Tamer on and reduce from 1900 GS units down to less than 50, it's not going to happen.
Or a neighbor with PV, Bill.
A neighbor has PV and they don't know it. They don't understand that, they're all in the same power strip, okay, at the transformer, right? And so we will not recommend a Sine Tamer, in my opinion, for anybody that has a home solar system. Okay.
Yeah.
I advise it as an insurance for the mitigation of lightning strikes. But if I was me, if someone came to me and says, I need a filter, what do I do? I say those first questions. Are you on solar? Okay. What measurements have you got right now? And then if it's within range, so to speak, less than 1,000 GS units if possible, then I would recommend a Sine Tamer. And if they install it correctly and they don't get relief, in other words, they're still feeling the physical effects, then I take it back, no questions asked. Okay, and give them a full refund, or I'll give them a credit for a pair of DNA filters.
Bill, I understand that. My question is, you've already determined that the person needs both a pair of DNA and the Sine Tamer. Physically, what is closest to the main cutoff, and then what is closest to the, let's say they have a smart meter or whatever, or the power source. In other words, which one gets installed?
As you know, there's a lot of variables here. But if they say I got a smart meter and it's making me sick and I don't know what to do, right? That's commonly with the question I'll get. And they don't know much more else, right? So I say, get a Sine Tamer and get the electrician to install it. Okay. And if everything goes okay, then we're done. If it's not okay, here's what I typically do. I say, keep the Sine Tamer. Okay. Because believe me, you're gonna be better off with it versus without it. And then we'll sell you with a credit for the pair of DNA filters. You plug those in also. That's kind of
Bill,
what we do.
Bill, I
Yeah,
think
and-
you're not understanding his question.
Yeah.
He's talking about, Henry's talking about physically. I want the two filters and I want to install them on my panel. Which one goes first? This one or that one? Is that the
Sine Tamer
question,
first,
Henry?
then the DNAs.
Talking about physical, how he ties it into the
Well,
panel.
they're both in parallel, so they're
Yeah.
side by side, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
they're both
Oh,
going into
they're-
a breaker.
In other words, they're not in series. They're in
You don't put
parallel.
one after the other, Henry.
They're in
No.
parallel. I didn't understand the
Okay,
basis of your question.
Yeah. And another thing about the Sine Tamer is because it reacts so fast, it doesn't matter where you put it on the panel. Be up or lower, wherever. We don't care. Because
Thank
you're
You
gonna
mean
get the same.
where you put it, which,
No,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. Anywhere on there is fine. It's same as MCCs, big, incoming panels. And because they're already self-thermally fused internally, we've had them in big MCCs and airports and stuff. We'll screw them right into the buses. I'll put a remote set of lights on it, mount it inside, and they're good to go because there's a suppression device. They don't have to have a switch on. Right, or a breaker.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Terry. Oh, no, but go ahead, Eric.
Doug, did I answer your question?
Most of it. What I don't understand though is when you have someone who just can't handle the expense of DNAs. Let's say they get a Sine Tamer, and you can do the analysis to figure out if their load is likely to get into resonance or if you need any ferrite chokes after the filter. Can you just buy, a $300, 150 amp passive filter, not a DNA, but something much less expensive, and install that with your Sine Tamer in order to take care of the
Well, as long as it's UL certified, yeah, no problem.
yeah, oh, there are tons of them.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it
When I
would
see
be
lots
nice
of,
to
I
hear
saw
about
people
those.
do stupid stuff like put a capacitor between the hot leads and the neutral wire on the panel.
Oh yeah, I've seen a lot.
And that used to be done 100 years ago, if you didn't know that. And NEC kiboshed that idea because houses were catching fire.
Bill, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
This is Jeff from California. What do you recommend for somebody who has solar? The Sine Tamer won't do the job, or do you put both of them, or do you recommend a
Yeah,
DNA?
I mean, obviously there's a lot of budget constraints here, but if the client can afford it, I recommend both the Sine Tamer and the DNA filters. And it depends on the solar system they have. If they have what's called a microinverter system, or in other words, they're tied to the grid and they're using a microinverter on the back of the panel, and that microinverter outputs 120 volts or 240 volts, depending on the design. And so that device, if it's the proper product, I think it's the IQ7 microinverter. That can be mitigated with just a pair of DNA filters very successfully. I've done that many times.
Which DNA filters?
The V2X.
And then when do they need to move up to the B3LF?
I gotta be very frank with you. I have only found a few instances where the V3LF was applicable. It was a very unusual circumstance, and had to do a lot with the customer's internal electronic devices. And they had a sound system, and they wanted to make sure no humming, no noise, et cetera, from lower frequencies was interjecting into the system. So those are special cases, but I've only sold probably 20 V3LFs, and I've sold 1,000 V2Xs.
I thought the really sensitive people needed the V3LF, so you're just speaking in regards to solar.
Just talking about solar.
Okay.
Okay, and so I've only sold a few V3LFs, electricity speaking, compared to the V2X. And so now if it's a string inverter,
Oh, okay.
okay, like let's say Outback, okay, which is horrific. Okay. That takes a little more horsepower. Okay. There's no way you're going to get away with that type of string inverter without including a pair of line inductors as part of the circuitry. So output of the inverter goes to a line inductor goes to the panel. At the panel, you put a pair of V2X filters, and then that solves the problem. I've got lots of customers that have done that. It's expensive, but it is the only way to fix it.
Is it one line inductor or two?
A pair, because it's 240 output, 240 volt output of a string inverter going to the panel.
Would you still use a sine tamer with that combination?
Yes, I do. It depends. So let me explain here, okay? Some people have already spent $50,000 on their solar system, okay? And here comes Bill Bathgate, with a $7,000 solution. Okay. Now it depends on the customer's tolerance, right? At this point in time, they're hurting so bad from the installation of the solar system. They're really not tolerable of spending another $1,300 on top of the already charge them $7,000-8,000 for the inductors and the V2X filters. The pain is getting high. Okay. So you
a lightning strike comes down and zaps.
So a lightning strike comes down and zaps everything.
Yeah.
So that's what I always caution. I say, listen, this is going to protect your system from surges and lightning strikes because you're tied to the grid. Okay. Just to give you some perspective, but I will tell you, it is a careful conversation with a client that's already spent a whole boatload of money, right? And it's hurting.
Yeah.
So I do have a financing plan for people that can't afford it initially, the initial payment.
Well, excuse me, Jeff, but if the person can't live in the house, they might be willing to do that, or move, or get rid of the system, the PV system.
Yeah, and getting rid of it. I mean, I have a friend who has a nice house in fantastic, beautiful Magic Island, and he has leukemia and an Outback inverter. And so, would it be less expensive or more effective to just replace the Outback and put in the Sine Tamer and maybe some additional DNA or passive filter?
Go ahead, Bill. What do you think?
So you're saying remove the solar system entirely?
Not the whole solar system. Leave the panels up. All that installation work's done. Just replace the Outback inverter. Maybe slap on some micro inverters.
Yeah. Change the string inverter to micro inverters at the back of the panels. I will tell you that has worked successfully in the past.
Oh, you can do that, huh?
Yep.
And what about variable speed pool pumps, Bill? That's a very common problem here in California.
Yeah, the only solution for that is obviously either change the design of the pool pump, which may not be possible.
Okay, wait a minute. We're talking a neighbor's pool pump coming in.
Okay. You
don't have any control over that.
All right, so then I'll tell you what I know, and this is not fun. You've got to basically put a pair of 4 total, if you have 200 amp service, 4 total inductors on the incoming feed from the utility grid to your power pit.
Okay, wait a minute. So we have a 200 amp service. So you need an induct 100 on one side and induct 100 on the other side, right?
Hold on. It's a 200 amp service, so 200 amps could go down either line 1 or line 2, the way this system works, right? That's the way the utility is set up.
Oh, okay.
So you can't put just 100 on there, because if there's a surge or a high demand on one side of the breaker panel versus the other, you'll exceed the capacity of the inductor.
Oh.
So you have to be very careful here. I have a customer that we actually re-engineered their panel so that it was balanced, right? So there's no way a load of more than 100 amps could come across line 1 or line 2. But that's not easy to do when you got a bunch of double breakers.
Okay, so you're saying that a 200 amp single phase panel really needs
4 inductors.
4.
Wow.
Okay, but they're flow through, so.
Yeah, they carry current. Yep.
So when you say 4 inductors, is that 2 isolation transformers?
No, they're inductors. They're not an
Okay.
isolation transformer.
So that's the only way to really wipe out incoming DE from the next door pool. Is that what
correct.
you're saying?
That is correct.
So these are in line,
Yeah.
two per leg is what you're saying.
Yes.
Wow.
What's that
That's a
cost?
lot of money.
Wow.
The first thing I would do is put a pair of V2X filters at the panel and see how it works out. First, that would be the very first thing I would do, because, you know, I'm not physically there, right? I don't have my instruments. They don't have an instrument. We don't know. We're working in the dark. Okay. So my first recommendation is buy a pair of V2X filters, plug them in, and see how that solves your problem.
And by stating it that way, Bill, what you mean is, how do they feel physiologically? Doesn't matter what we measure.
Yeah, exactly.
How does the client, how does the EHS client feel? Because they're more sensitive than our meters.
And I haven't been 100% successful with that recommendation. I have been successful about 50% of the time.
With which one? With
The neighbor has a pool pump, and I'm affected, and the noise level is through the roof. What do I do?
So 50% effective with the first solution or the second? The first being
with just installing a pair of DNA filters at the panel.
All right, and for those people who went on, those few who went on and did the 4 inductors, what of those people,
100%,
what percentage?
100% resolve.
Wow, expensive pool, eh?
But you know, they're sick as a dog because of the neighbor. It's just, I'm sorry. At some point in time, guys, you know, when the OTD rule from the FCC, we've had people putting 5G cell towers on top of their house. And there's going to be murders.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If my neighbor next to me put up a 5G tower in his house and beaming at my home, making me sick, what do you think's going to happen?
Yeah.
You're going to shoot them.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't shoot him. I'd get another antenna myself and radiate it back at them and let them die of cancer before I do.
I see.
The trouble is, how are you going to feel when you get into prison?
There might be a tower.
You can't prove I did it. FCC says it's all safe. Don't worry about it.
RF doesn't
Or you
cause
can
illness.
call Peter and he will shield it for you.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're getting off in the weeds here. We've gone past our end break for lunch hour. We'll come back at 1 o'clock, and I'm going to leave just a couple questions left for Terry if people have it. And then we're going to do the whole DE testing stuff. Will be a full afternoon of DE testing. I find it very interesting.
Okay. Thanks, Bill. You
Terry, that was
did
great.
2 years worth of searching.
Thank you.
All right.